Hello, everyone, and welcome to All Around Azure, where today we're going to be talking about DevOps with GitHub. All Around Azure is hosted in multiple time zones across multiple languages and all delivered by local hosts and speakers. So welcome. We're really excited to have you today. My name is April Edwards, and I'm going to be your host, guiding you through all the sessions and the Q&A. So I want you to join on Learn TV, where you'll be able to get the full experience and you'll be able to submit your questions live. And for each session, we're going to do our best to answer each and one of those questions that you might have about the session and that topic. So before we get started, we need to do a little bit of housekeeping. So we have a code of conduct that we ask everyone in the community to work with. So first and foremost, we want to ask everyone to be friendly and welcoming in this environment, okay? We have an open community. We want you to listen to your peers, create spaces for others to communicate with us and with you. And remember, be patient. We all have different communication styles. We come from different backgrounds and languages, so be patient with one another. And let's be thoughtful. We want to make sure that our words are interpreted well, and we can remember sometimes it's best to learn how others work. So let's be thoughtful of that. Let's also be respectful and inclusive. Again, we want to respect everyone's differences in opinion because DevOps has a lot of differences in opinions. And let's make sure we're open and curious. Ask those questions. Be open to others' opinions and ideas. And please feel free to reach out to us at the email below, devrelevents@microsoft.com, if you need anything at all. So today, let's get started. We have such an exciting event for you today. We're going to go through a little bit of the welcome and the overview, and let's go through the agenda. We have 5 sessions. Each of these sessions are going to be about 15 minutes long with 10 minutes of live questions from you in the audience. So please get those questions submitted. Our first session today is getting started with DevOps. We're going to learn about the basics of DevOps and Git, and it's going to be a fantastic session you don't want to miss. The second session, we're going to be managing the flow of our work. Another great session with some great Q&A after. The third session today is going to be building in security and quality into your code. A great session. Again, don't want to miss that one either. Our fourth session is delivering change to the cloud. Everyone's working in the cloud. They want to know how they deliver that. Another great session. Our fifth and final session is operating software in the cloud. And let me tell you, all of these sessions are going to be amazing today. And there's not one that's any better than the other. So really, you're going to have to stick around for all 5. Get those questions submitted. And remember, all of these sessions are going to be available on demand in the next few days. You won't be able to submit those live questions. So please get those in today. So if you do want to catch up with the sessions later, you can go to aka.ms/AAA-DevOps GitHub. We'll have the link for you to look at below. And now we're going to have a welcome video from the awesome Stephen Murawski.
Welcome to All Around Azure DevOps with GitHub. I'm Stephen Murawski, a principal cloud advocate here at Microsoft. I was the content lead for the sessions you'll be seeing today. Now, to set the stage for the journey that we're going to go on, I'd like to outline our afternoon. The sessions you'll see are based on the DevOps principles and practices that are reflected in the AZ400 exam. The AZ400 exam covers topics like managing source control, facilitating communication, dealing with compliance and security, continuous integration and continuous delivery, site reliability engineering, and even more, which was a great outline for the sessions that we have today. Now, this isn't an exam prep session. However, the Microsoft Learn paths that we have to refer you to offer some hands-on experience to prepare you for that, if that's what you want to do. Otherwise, just settle in and prepare for a journey into what adopting DevOps practices could look like with Azure and GitHub. Now, before we get into those sessions, we should probably level set on what DevOps is and why it matters. The definition that we use at Microsoft is DevOps is the union of people, process, and products to enable the continuous delivery of value to our end users. And here's the bottom line. The speed of business is so crazy fast and life so unpredictable. I mean, just look at the last 18 months and how the world has changed. That the only way that technical teams can keep up is if they adopt DevOps practices. If they don't, they won't be able to keep up. And here's the sad truth. If you don't adopt DevOps practices, your competitors either are or will. And when they do, they will start to out-innovate you. And when that happens, you can become obsolete. and no one wants to become obsolete. All right, so really this is where the exact position that Microsoft found itself in the 2010, 2010 timeframe. Now, there's a lot more nuance to this story than I can share right now, but here's the high level. Back then, we were still delivering code about once every 3 to 4 years, but our competitors were innovating faster and we were losing customers. It was a very scary place for us to be. We knew we had to change. We knew we had to adapt and shift and adopt DevOps practices. We also had a broken culture and broken process, and we used tools very inconsistently. We did everything that we call out in DevOps wrong, though it felt right at the time. We shipped products every 3 to 4 years, and the product teams competed. No reuse went unpunished inside those teams. Inside product teams, we had conflicts between developers and our QA. Our service engineers, our operations folks, they were very hands-on and reactive. Now, as Satya Nadella took over as CEO, he realized that this story had to change. He started the One Microsoft initiative as a way to bring our culture back into focus with one mission that we share as a company. And all of our teams support that mission. He also initiated the One Engineering system to help remove duplicated effort across Microsoft. No longer did each product team have to custom craft work item and build, deployment, and source control. These efforts combined provided our leadership a direction to head as our teams learned to work together. While the stories you hear are about a fictional company, while these upcoming stories are about a fictional company, they are influenced by the story of Microsoft and then our own individual experiences in the real world. These stories and other that you may hear may encourage you to explore DevOps and the practices and tools around it. As you explore, there will be bumps along the way. Our DevOps story is filled with pain points and how we work past them. And as you watch these sessions, the demos and ideas are directional, giving you something to aim for, not necessarily something that you're going to see right out of the box. Each session was crafted to give you a view into what it might look like from a practitioner's point of view. As our friends at Tailwind Traders, which is a born-in-the-cloud company, deals with growth and expansion after acquiring Northwind, which was an existing traditional organization. Tailwind is dealing with a growth in staff. In their early days, they didn't have DevOps challenges. Everyone performed multiple jobs and the organization was small enough that communication, it just wasn't difficult. Now they have a bigger team, including dedicated operators, developers, DBAs, and more. We'll follow and work alongside Tailwind's technical team as they explore the shared tooling and creating a version source of truth in our first session. Next, we'll explore how we manage the flow of work in our organizations with our technical teams coming together. Adjustments have to be made in both development and operations. Operators, they start to work in a more agile fashion. And the developers, they start moving away from long-running branches and work to merge to main more quickly. Merging to main more quickly introduces some challenges with quality and security. So our third session, it focuses on how the Tailwind team addresses those concerns. From security scans to ensuring that the changes behave properly in production, our team learns a lot. The fourth session that we'll explore is the deployment into the cloud and the practices that we can adopt to bring our deployment experience closer to what our team experiences in a ChatOps environment. And then our fifth and final session covers the operational experience and extends that ChatOps discussion in a way to bring incident response into our shared communications channel. I hope that you'll enjoy the journey that we'll take over the next couple of hours. Please take advantage of the experts that we've collected from across Microsoft and our community to answer your questions live in the stream and in the Chat and Learn TV. After our time today, if any of the topics, ideas, or questions we raised spark interest, we'd love for you to come over to Microsoft Learn, which is our online free learning platform, and continue that journey. You can do that at aka.ms/AAA DevOps Learn link. There you'll find a collection of learning paths that support the major objectives of the AZ400 exam, from source control and continuous integration to site reliability engineering and security and compliance. We have resources to help you learn in 30 to 60-minute modules. Thank you and enjoy the sessions.
All right, everyone, welcome. It's time to get going for our first session today. I'm really stoked about our first speaker. It's Esther Bartel from the Netherlands. I promised you local speakers from the community. She's an MVP and she's a rock star in DevOps. She's going to get started with our first session, Getting Started with DevOps. Esther, welcome.
Thank you. And happy to be here. It's exciting times. So I'll just start kicking off these awesome sessions that we prepared for you. And it's my honor to get started with DevOps. And as April already said, apparently I'm the rock star that's going to guide you through these slides. So first of all, as mentioned before, this is the first session of a series of 5, making sure that you dive right into DevOps learning path. But before I get started with explaining some of the DevOps methodology and terms, let me first introduce you to Tailwind Traders, which basically is our company that we are using as an example case for the different DevOps methodologies. So this is a company that is experiencing rapid growth, differing goals across teams, and needs some better collaboration tooling. So basically, they are looking forward to implement a DevOps methodology, as they said, better communication tools and share tooling. So let's look at some of the solutions that we can provide them in their journey. So this session is going to focus quickly on what is DevOps, source control, using Microsoft Teams as a collaboration hub, and extending DevOps with Visual Studio Code. So let's dive into the fun. What is DevOps? So DevOps basically is the union of people, processes, and products to enable continuous delivery of value to your end users. And I do realize that's quite a quote. But I'll definitely explain it in a bit better in just a few seconds. So technology plays a key role in executing DevOps strategies. It enables teams to collaborate more efficiently, enhance productivity, and it even facilitates experimentation. So do not fear to fail, because failure will also teach you a lot of life lessons, so to speak. And another key component is automation, and I'll show you in a minute. So studies showed that high-performance DevOps companies achieve developer velocity by having a faster turnaround from commit to deploy, faster incident recovery, a lower chance of failure rates, and definitely more frequent deployments, basically having a faster time to market and resulting in increased revenue. But as I mentioned before, DevOps definitely is all about people. And this also means that if we're talking about people, we also need to take into account that DevOps can definitely bring a cultural shift with it. It needs a different mindset in those involved in the DevOps methodology. And definitely does need some support from management in a top-down structure. And last but not least, I think the key component about DevOps is that we all are focused on continuously delivering value to our end users. Because if we are just working with specialized teams and not collaborating enough, I think the end user will not get the best experience that they can get in the solutions that we provide. So definitely keep that in mind. And one last thing, if we're talking about DevOps, is definitely the process as well. So keep in mind that it's all about planning your sprints, making sure that you have a centralized location to check in and check out your code, to have automated builds that kick off the build, so to speak. To integrate testing, integrate security scans, and make sure that it's all one seamless process. But as I mentioned before, automation is key in all this, because it definitely means that this process that we're going to follow needs to be consistent and repeatable. Because in contradiction to what we did in the past, where we had long release cycles, we are now focusing on shorter release bursts, which can even happen more frequently and even multiple times during the day. So definitely make sure that you understand all the requirements to have a good DevOps process in place. So let's look at some of the cool solutions that we have nowadays that will enable us to have that DevOps strategy. So first of all, let's talk about source control. So source control basically is a form of version control. Uses the concept of code repositories to have a centralized place to store all your code. And it also allows you to track any changes that are made by different team members to that code within the repositories. And as I mentioned, different team members definitely is a great supporter for cross-team collaboration. And one of the well-known examples of source control, of course, is GitHub. And if we're focusing on GitHub, it's the leader basically in GitHub repository hosting. It offers expertise sharing, cross-team collaboration, as mentioned before, improved code reuse, code spaces to help you instantly build development environments, GitHub Actions to support any continuous integration and continuous delivery pipelines and workflows that you want to have, and it increases velocity. The other cool tool that or solution or impact that I wanted to talk about is using Microsoft Teams as a collaboration hub. So if we're looking at Teams, it's not just about chat, meet, call, collaborate from anywhere. It's also helping you to achieve more in a faster pace because it has full Microsoft 365 integration. But also can be extended with countless integrations for other applications and services. And last but not least, I wanted to focus on Visual Studio and how it can help you extend your DevOps strategy. So Visual Studio is a lightweight and powerful source code editor that can run on any system, whether it's Mac, Windows, Linux. And it has Git commands built in. So it can easily connect to your centralized repositories and check in and check out code. It's extensible and customizable. It has intelligence syntax highlights, which definitely helps me in all the scripting that I do in different scripting languages. Easily debugs code. And it's open source and free. So what is stopping you for definitely checking out Visual Studio? And I hope you get just as excited as I am. But I do realize that this is a lot of theory. And there's always more fun in showing you how it all integrates. So this is a high-speed demo video that will show you how all these different solutions integrate and give you a better DevOps experience. So I'll just quickly talk you through the different steps in the demo. So we're starting with our GitHub repository, or basically Tailwind Traders GitHub repository for their website. And as you can see, I can check out the code to my local system and use Visual Studio Code to make changes to that to the code. In this case, I want to make sure that my automated workflow will deliver it to the staging website that I have. And the Git commands integrated in Visual Studio Code allow me to quickly commit my changes, which is still a local process on my system to make sure that it understands the changes that I made to the code. And then I'll sync it back to the centralized repository. And this one also has GitHub Actions enabled that will automatically start that workflow the minute I make some changes to the code. Unfortunately for me, I don't think the changes were very successful, because now it shows in the publishing step of this workflow that an error occurred. So, and the reason why I'm showing you some of my moments of failure, so to speak, is that this also allows me to show you another cool feature of Visual Studio Code called Live Share. And this allows me to quickly introduce one of my colleagues to the code that I'm working on, to live look at the code and collaborate with me. In this case, I'm using Teams to just make a quick call with him. And instead of me sharing my screen and having to give him either control or have him command me where to go through or scroll through the pages, with Live Share, I can give him direct access to the code, which I really enjoy. And another cool thing is once he is connected to my live sharing, you can actually see him move around in the code. And so you can also learn from the changes that he is making or suggesting to your code. And in this case, Zachary already noticed that my very ambitious Node version is 14. But unfortunately, that is not the version that the current website is running correctly on. So he suggested to me to use version 10, or at least version 10. So making sure that the changes that he suggested and already made during that live share session are committed back to the centralized repository. Because if you remember correctly, committing this code to the repository will trigger that automated start of my GitHub Actions workflow. So making sure that the changes are committed. I'm just so excited. So I'm already way ahead of the video. So back to my centralized repository. The code has changed and it triggered my GitHub Actions workflow once again. So zooming in on the build, keeping my fingers crossed, seeing it work through all the different steps. Now it's back to publishing. So this is the moment where the previous run showed an error. Fortunately for me, Zachary's suggestion was definitely a good one. So I've passed the publishing phase, and now it's actually deploying it to my staging website. And fortunately, it also tells me what the URL is of that website. So I can easily check if this change and this successful run made sure that the website is now fully functional. And as you can see, it is. So this means that today, I'm definitely a happy camper and proud of the code that I produced. So getting back to Tailwind Traders, what I said in the beginning is that they had a couple of needs that they wanted to solve, like they're rapidly growing, lack of collaboration, and a lack of shared tooling. So I hope that with the solutions that we just showed in this presentation, like the source control via GitHub, Microsoft Teams as a collaboration hub, using Visual Studio Code and the live share option to have a shared tooling platform, definitely gave them a solid foundation for their DevOps strategy and better collaboration. If you want to learn more about DevOps and are getting as excited as I am about DevOps, definitely check out the DevOps Research Center, because it will have tons of tutorials, examples, and so much more DevOps fun for you. And for those of you who are focused on the AZ400 certification or thinking about it, do check out these links, because they will definitely give you a head start on getting certified in DevOps. Basically, that's all from my side. So back to April, and do enjoy the rest of the day and the rest of the awesome sessions that are ahead of us.
Thank you, Esther. That was great. We've had some great questions come in. So we have about 10 minutes now to start looking at the questions. You ready?
Yes, I'll start breathing again.
Take a breath. Take a breath. So it was great. We had great audience participation. We ran a poll during your session. We asked people, what source control are you currently using? 93% of the people are using Git, which is awesome.
Yes.
7% are using SVN. Cool. So yeah, if you guys want to keep throwing, your comments into the poll, please do. We love the feedback. We love the participation. We'll have polls going through every talk, something to talk about. Again, keep firing those questions through. So we've had a couple questions from the audience. The first one is, what do you think is the difference between live share in Visual Studio Code and code spaces for GitHub?
Oh, wow. That's an awesome question. I do think that code spaces for GitHub is an entire feature set on its own. And I have to admit that I realized that it's still in preview. So I think we're going to see even more exciting features in that. So it will definitely enrichen your DevOps experience. Where for me, live share is more like inviting someone into your home and sharing your personal code and just having that, maybe awkward moment at first where you go like, oh, okay, I hope you don't talk about the comments that I made.
Here's
there.
my code. Please don't rip it apart, right?
Please be gentle. Yes, correct.
Yeah. Cool. And I think GitHub Code Spaces is still in preview. I've been using it with customers, and the live share capability is built into that. So it's almost identical to using Visual Studio Code. So if you're using Visual Studio Code on your thick client and then want to use maybe the live share feature in Code Spaces, it's awesome. It works really well. Right. We're getting more votes in. We still have more people putting in the poll, which is awesome. Everyone keep contributing. We have another question about SRE versus DevOps. How do you see the continuity between those, or maybe what the difference is in those teams, or who fits those teams?
I have to admit that that is not something that I thought about previously. I just kind of shifted with the whole DevOps because it feels very natural to me to adapt. And maybe that's because I come from an end user computing background where we were already responsible for providing end user experience and supporting that full stack from the endpoint back to the data center and vice versa. So for me, I already have a high responsibility for the solutions that I provide to my end users. So that to me got me all excited about DevOps too, because that still felt like I could definitely keep that. I'm lost for words. I do apologize. Well, I just could keep that excitement about feeling responsible for the end user experience and having that evaluation moment where the end user experience would basically tell me if I was successful in my work or not. So that's why I just jumped into DevOps and the DevOps strategies. And basically forgot to ask that very important question as well regarding SRE.
Cool. We have some more questions for you. Question from Mark. Directly to you, Esther. Do you use VS Code pets when you edit your YAML in VS Code?
Not yet. But I do have a colleague that got me all excited about pets. And I have to admit that I really love the idea of just having my own digital furry equivalent within VS Code. So yeah, definitely gonna dive into that a bit more. But yes, something with a backlog and too little time during the day.
There's always too little time. We have another question from Alan. Can you advise how exactly the code modification is done? Is that some Git REST API, or is it Git command line that you're using?
Oh, so I have to admit that for me, I come from an operational background. So for me, it's I used to just add like dates to each and every file that I copied with newer code because I was too scared to lose some of my old ideas or old coding techniques. So Git for me still is kind of new. So I'm still struggling with some of the terminology. So in this case, I'm just using the integrated options menu, visual driven within Visual Studio Code that just, I assume, are running the commands in the background, because it did tell me that it needed to have Git installed on my machine. But for me, it's very intuitive to just click on the files that I want to commit. I even have that staging commit option, so I can make sure that I only select those files of code changes that I want to commit or stage, then run that commit, and then do a push back to the repository to see the end result and be able to share those improvements with my coworkers.
Cool. Awesome. Good questions. Good answers. When we we had a question about SRE and DevOps, and I think DevOps is, for me, a bit of everyone's responsibility to come in on. We see SRE a lot with operational folk that have that operational background. And what in your experience do you think Git has been for ops people in terms of like adoption, importance, etc.? How do you see that with operations team? Because we've seen it as like this developer tool for so long, but actually the operation teams, when we're going to start talking about infrastructure code and all sorts of cool things the next few sessions. Like, how do you think that translates for operational people?
Well, for me, it meant that I had to make a mindset shift as well. So now everything has to be coded. And I just have been invested in automated deployments and automated configurations for a couple of years now. And it took me a little while to understand the power of it, because I've had lots of conversations with operations asking me why you would spend 8 hours trying to figure out how to automate a checkbox that you can just select through the GUI in like seconds. So it's all about understanding the consistency of the actions that you automate and and repeatability of those actions. And with the fast pace of releases, even on our services, whether it's on premises or in the cloud, we do need to adapt so much faster to releases and make sure that we can test them thoroughly before we throw them at our users in production. So for me, having that ability to describe and define my infrastructure as code is a lifesaver, because it means I have to focus less on disturbances in my production environments. And I get to have more fun being innovative and creative within my infrastructure.
Awesome. Those are really, really great answers. And I think we're seeing more operational people embrace Git, learning to use Git. And there's some great tools out there for that, not just using VS Code, but like GitHub Desktop, et cetera, to help make that jump a lot easier.
That's how I got started too, with GitHub Desktop, definitely.
Yeah, it makes that transition so much easier, instead of using the CLI and trying to figure out commands and then having, just the command side of it. A lot of people struggle with. So GitHub Desktop was an awesome tool that I think a lot of people find in the operational space. Right. I think we have time for maybe two more questions. Jeremy asked, I appreciate the session is Azure DevOps and Git oriented. What is the future of Azure DevOps and Team Foundation version control? Is it being supported in the future? So Esther, I don't know if you want to answer that one, or I'm happy to take it.
Well, I can always hide behind my MVP NDA and just say, well, it kind of depends. But I think there's different audiences, both for Azure DevOps and for GitHub and GitHub Actions. So the cool thing that I like about the whole DevOps and the tools that are available is that you get to play around with different tools, and you get to pick those tools that you feel most comfortable with to help you get that end result and get that added value for your end user. So I believe there's a space and time for both in this market. Definitely, if you're more comfortable with Azure DevOps, definitely go that way. It also supports Git repositories. So it's not like you have to choose one over the other. And yeah, I love GitHub Actions too, because it feels a bit easier when you get started with workflows and infrastructure as code. GitHub Actions might just feel a bit more intuitive, especially with the large marketplace of community actions that are already pre-built for you.
Cool. I'm going to fire one fast question at you, Esther.
Okay.
Totally be prepared for this one. GitHub Actions. It's more than just CI/CD. What's either your advice or favorite, like easy starting point to start automating something? And GitHub Actions related, go.
Oh, I hate that question because I'm still just playing, or at least it feels like that. I'm still playing around with it. There's so much to discover. So yeah, all I can say is just start with a community action that you think is fun. That will help you. Don't worry too much about the automated triggers to start your workflow. And just have those baby steps. I started even with Hello World, like just creating a text file on a web server. And just have Hello World in there and just felt on top of the world when it worked. So you can have so much fun.
Absolutely.
Just do it.
Awesome. Just automate all the things. Esther, thank
Definitely.
you so much. You've been amazing. Great Q&A questions. Great session. Thank you so much for being here today and doing this session.
Thank you for having me, and enjoy the rest of the day because there are going to be some awesome sessions next.
Thank you. All right, everyone, that's session 1 down. Great feedback from everyone in the Q&A and in the poll. Loved it. Hopefully we got to everyone's questions or majority of them. But right now we're going to take our first break and hear about an awesome way to keep learning after today's event. Learn Live. So this weekly show on Learn TV works through one MS Learn module after each episode, and you can follow along from your home. They pull in guests to give you extra commentary from experts and sometimes even the engineers who built it. So with a focus on an introduction to Git through mid-May. So check them out at aka.ms/learnlive.
Hi everyone, I'm Unai.
And I am Peter.
And we are both Azure technical trainers at Microsoft with a focus on DevOps. One of the tools we talk about a lot during Azure trainings is Git. Git can seem a little bit cryptic and complex at first, so it's good to take a step-by-step approach instead of getting overwhelmed and making mistakes.
So please join us, along with other Microsoft experts, for a 4-part introduction to Git here on Learn Live. We will cover everything from an introduction to Git for beginners, but also covering collaborating, how to use branching, and closing with Git in the broader GitHub tooling.
Head over to aka.ms/learn-git to add each episode to your calendar and join us live in Learn TV and get your question answers from Git experts. We hope to see you there.
Welcome back, everyone. Super quick break. We're going to the second session. I'm really excited about this session. Again, we have such great sessions headed on today. This one is Managing the Flow of Work with Floor Dries and another community member, Rita. Welcome both.
Hello, April. I am so curious for the source control poll. Were there any viewers that said that they are using Word docs or anything to track changes to their source code? Because I've seen this happen.
I've seen it as well. That wasn't an option. So Team Foundation version control was the only one that had 0 votes for it at the moment. It seemed like everyone was using Git, but I have seen Word documents being used before.
I mean, some people aren't being honest in answering this poll, but okay.
We can do some more polls when we get some more honesty. So super excited for both of you to present this next session. Right, let's get started.
Absolutely. Let me pull up the slides and we'll introduce ourselves very quickly. Rita, you want to start?
Yeah, sure. So hi, everyone. I'm Rita. I'm engineering manager at a fintech company called XPay, and I'm very passionate about building successful development teams.
Yeah, and my name is Floor, and I'm a senior program manager at Microsoft.
Yay, then let's get to it. Yes. So we were talking about Tailwind traders, and they have gone all in on DevOps. So Tailwind traders, they've read about it, they've studied it, they've gone to classes on DevOps. Basically, they've even decided on their tooling stack, and they're ready to start DevOpsing. But what is DevOps actually? If you ask 10 different people, you're going to get 20 different responses, right? So value is the most important part. And the earlier you can put something in the hands of your end users, the sooner you can evaluate its true value. So that's why we're after continuous delivery. Let's talk about delivering anything to the end user. And that's what we'll be looking at this session. But it's not easy to do this right. In order to really adopt DevOps best practices, you must address all these three pillars, like the people, the process, and the products. So the people, that's a cultural change that must occur within your organization. And for process, we need a process that will let us iterate fast enough, yet still deliver code on high enough quality. And finally, we need products that help enable all of this. So all they need to know now is the process. So let's have a look at that. So zooming out, the process allows the teams to innovate fast, yet deliver code of high quality. So need to plan sprints. Developers need to check code in and out of a central location, and they need to be able to track changes of other developers. Builds need to kick off in an automated fashion. Security scans need to be automated, and if build succeeds, continuous delivery needs to package their applications for deployment. Scrum. Oh, well, in Scrum, everything starts with the backlog. But what is a backlog? Think of it as a prioritized wish list of everything you want your software to do. And the most important things are on the top, and the least important things sink to the bottom. And at the beginning of a sprint or iteration, the product owner prioritizes that backlog. So when the team commits to doing part of that backlog based on priority and what they think they can get done, they spend the sprint working, they burn down whatever bugs are found in sprint, and the end of the sprint, they show what they've accomplished to the product owner, and in a sprint review meeting or demo, hopefully they can actually push this to production. And based on the sprint review demo, the product owner then reprioritizes the backlog, and the whole cycle rinses and repeats itself. Well, this was a super quick description of Scrum. So let's dive a little bit deeper on some of the general principles of Scrum. So this is not a waterfall project. We don't build the entire thing and then release it. We build it up incrementally, sprint after sprint, and building the highest priority items on the backlog first. We do this because this allows the product owner to look at what we are building at the end of every sprint. And when they do, they can give immediate feedback. This is very important. This is vital. By building our software incrementally, we can have frequent inspections of the software, and we can immediate course correct if we need to. So instead of wasting months of work, the worst that could happen is we waste one iteration, mostly that's 2 weeks, and then we course correct. So next in an Agile or Scrum project, everything should be transparent. So the product and sprint backlog should be public, where everyone can easily see what the team is currently working on and what the team will most likely work on next. So transparency and communication is key in an Agile and DevOps world. So next I want to touch on what makes up a Scrum team. Well, there are actually only 3 roles. First is the product owner, and there is literally only one job for the product owner to do, and that is prioritize the backlog. The success or failure of this piece of software must directly affect the product owner. And next there's the Scrum Master, and the Scrum Master has 2 roles. So one is to make sure that the team follows the Scrum best practices, and the second one is to protect the Scrum team from outside interference. And finally, of course, there's the dev team. And in an ideal world, every person on the team can pick up any work that's on the backlog and just get it done. And these Scrum teams should be also autonomous. No one needs to direct the Scrum team on how and what they should do. So next I want to touch on what makes up a Scrum team. The rituals. So doing Scrum, you can never, ever actually skip any of the rituals. And there are only 4 required meetings per sprint. So there's the sprint planning, where the product owners prioritizes that backlog, the daily stand-up, where the dev teams asked for 3 questions. And so one of them is what I do yesterday, what am I planning to do today, and are there any blockers? Then there's the sprint review or demo. At the end of the sprint, the team will demo what they have done to the product owner, and they will give them feedback. And there's the retrospective, where the team breaks down the good, the bad, and the ugly of whatever happened during the sprint. And these meetings are vital for Scrum to run smoothly, so they all must happen, but never go over the time box. So we don't want to be wasting any time. So that means that the Scrum Master has to run the meeting very efficiently. And then we have estimates. People in general are very bad in estimations. To help, but seriously, but to help with your estimates, like here are a few rules you can adopt if it's for you. So I break down my work into 4-hour chunks. So why 4 hours? Because first of all, it's a lot more accurate, right? I'm pretty good at estimating and small pieces of work. I can pretty much estimate a day's work, like very sort of good-ish, but not very well. 2 days, more than 2, I'm lost. I don't know. And to be really accurate, I can only like estimate for about 2 days. So if we break down a user story into 4-hour tasks, there is now a possibility that instead of just one person spending 3 days working on it, this can be broken down in multiple small tasks, and the team can work on it in parallel, which means we can close this ticket much faster. And I can quickly see if all the agreements that what done means, like the definition of done. The Scrum teams can create their own definition of done agreement. And as a Scrum Master, I can quickly point out when the definition of done criteria are not met. And the developer or the dev teams can now be aligned correctly on that definition and on what it entails. Finally, never start from a date. Because deadlines suck. Developers are pleasers and we want to make people happy. So if you start from a date, we will magically subdivide up the work so it fits a lot of time. And even though this doesn't work and this isn't accurate, it is what we do. So don't start from a date and work out the task that you need to do in 4-hour chunks and see where the end date lands. These rules apply to everyone. Like in order for Agile to work, everyone in the organization must be hyper-focused and aligned. So remember, the whole point of moving away from Waterfall to Agile is we have finally admitted that Waterfall does not work well in software. 90% of software projects fails. So we know the old metrics are garbage and we must all be aligned with how things are done and measured in Agile. So everyone from the top of your organization all the way down to the junior, they have to follow the rules of Scrum.
Great. And to do Agile right, Tier 1 traders needs the tools to track their work from one sprint to the next, like I already explained. They need to be able to reprioritize work on their backlog, as well as organize work within the sprint. And all of this needs to be accessible. Everybody needs to be able to look at it from every role that is in the company, because no one is working in a vacuum. So we'll have the product backlog, sprint backlog, and their current product plan being visible to everyone. And to show how this works, we're going to switch to a demo of Azure DevOps. I'm just waiting for the little video. The video is pre-recorded, but I'll be talking over it live, so you'll continue to hear my voice. There we go. So here we see the product backlog for Tailwind Traders. And as the product owner of Tailwind Traders, my job is to add work to the backlog. And I do that by selecting the new work item, adding a new work item. And then once it is added to the top, I can open it. I can add a description if I want to, acceptance criteria, so the definition of done in some way. I can add comments to it if I want to, and I can sort of drag and drop it to reprioritize as I see fit. So this is the entire product backlog, but then we want to have a sprint backlog as well, which is different, of course. Typically, you'll select a number of items from your product backlog and add them to your sprint backlog, sprint 3 in this case. And here we jump in. You see that it looks pretty similar to the product backlog. And in here, again, I can reprioritize as I see fit. I can add a little bit more granularity to the different items if I want to. I can add new work items. I can jump in and add sort of like subtasks for the work items that I already have in there. And so I can just add a little bit more detail to the sprint and what we're about to commit to in this sprint. You might see the sort of development item. So add it a little bit further in a demo. We'll also add some GitHub items or links to GitHub to these work items. So this is one thing, but it's really hard to sort of track work from the sprint backlog. And so you want to be going to the task board, which we'll be going to in a second, to actually see what everybody's working on at that very point in time. That's just adds a lot more visibility to what you've committed to working on. So let's go to the task board, which is great for tracking items in sprint. And you'll be able to sort of drag and drop items from the to-do column into the in progress and to done column. And then for even more sort of visibility of what people are working on, you can use a Kanban board. And you'll see there's also different swim lanes. That's what you call the sort of horizontal bars for instance, emergency tasks or PRs that need to be reviewed. And we can go into one of those PR items. I think that's what's coming up next. And you see the little AutoCAD symbol. So that means that this one is linked to an item like a pull request or a repository on GitHub. So let's pull up the repository of Tailwind Traders that we'll be working on. And we'll just open the README and make a couple of changes. This can be literally everything, right? For the purpose of the demo, we're just adding some text. And we're referencing ticket number 425. So your commit message can be doing some stuff, fixes, and then AD for Azure Devops, and the hashtag symbol and the number of the ticket. And you see that by actually clicking on the commit message, we'll see that the ticket moves to the done column on Azure Devops, and you'll see when you open the item that you can see under development that there's our commit message. We did some stuff, and it's fixes at XYZ. And by fixes, it moves to the done column. If you use other language, it will not move to the done column, but it will just add a deep link to the page, the PR on GitHub. There we go. Let's move back to our slides and talk a little bit more about some of the other issues that Tailwind Traders wanted to solve by moving to the DevOps way. So Tailwind Traders is now almost ready to start diving into coding, but they still have one process question that they need to answer. What branching scheme should they use? So traditional branching schemes involve many long living branches. You have the dev branch, QA branch, feature branches, the main branch, and all these long living branches, well, they do not equal moving quickly. So just think of all of the merge conflicts, right? And fixing merge conflicts is painful, as we all know, and it's expensive, takes a lot of time. And it's a problem that we all run into if we're using long-living branches. So we don't want to be doing that. Instead, Tailwind Traders has decided to use trunk-based development. So they're basically deving off of the main branch, and they're checking back code frequently. Let's see. So with no long-running branches, there's almost no merge conflicts to fix. And if they occur, then they should be you should be able to fix those quite quickly because like the code is still very fresh. But how could that possibly work? I know that you're thinking this. If you're all deving off the main branch, then you should be introducing bugs all over the place, right? No. Tailwind traders solved that problem by using a software technique called feature flags or feature toggles or switches or however you call the thing. But it's a technique that lets you turn off or on certain portions of your code during runtime. So in one deployment, now you can ship alternative code paths, and during code runtime, you can decide which path you want to follow. This is great because now you've separated development of the code from the delivery of your new feature. And you can do awesome stuff with that because you can, for instance, introduce A/B testing and just turn on a piece of the code or a new feature for just a select amount of users and turn it off for the other control group and see what code or what feature behaves better. Feature flags are really just if statements. So if your code supports if statements right now, and I bet they do, then you can support feature flags as well. I mentioned the A/B testing before. I mean, it's great. You can grab telemetry from both variations and then figure out which one delivers value to your customers better. And of course, if something goes wrong, but let's hope not, you can just roll back your changes and be done with it. So finally, Tailwind Traders is very concerned with quality, and we should all be. Moving as quickly as they will be moving in this new world, they want to have time to do full end-to-end testing, but they just won't. Like, reality is that they won't. And so they'll need to shift left and build quality into their app from the get-go and not sort of tag it on as an afterthought at the end. That's what traditional software companies are doing. Another thing they want to do to improve quality is to check every PR that goes into their code. The problem that they quickly run into is that like people start ignoring all of these PRs that are piling up. But of course, we have a problem or we have a solution to that problem as well. So Tailwind Traders really wants to see the changes running in a test system, which means that for every PR, they have to sort of build the app, package up the app, provision the infra that the change needed, and then configure it correctly. Then they need to deploy it, and then they could see the changes, right? And then once you're done with the PR review, you need to also clean all of that up again. And that's tedious work, and it's incredibly prone to error because we're just humans. Luckily, GitHub thought of something, and it's Github Actions, which is GitHub's workflow engine. And you can automate all sorts of things in GitHub. Esther talked about it a little bit in the previous session also already. So to solve the problem of PR stacking up, you could create a swim lane in your Kanban board, as you've seen before, to reflect all of those pull requests that are currently open, and someone could easily pick it up. And so whenever there's a pull request, you can have actions automatically add that to that particular swim lane so that it should be visible. And if people are not picking it up, that's something for the Scrum Master to intervene and make sure that someone does. You can also have an action automatically build and package up your application. And finally, when the PR is closed, then an action can also take care of cleaning up all of the stuff that was provisioned to make sure that people can review the pull request.
Okay, cool. Sounds like Tailwind Traders is now in a pretty good state. The fundamentals are all in place, and they're now ready for some more advanced topics. So go join us in the next session where we make sure that Tailwind Traders deliver both high quality code while maintaining security. So quick recap.
Thank you, Rita and Floor. That was awesome. That was such a great demo, such a great session. We are unfortunately running out of time before our break, but we are answering everyone's questions in the comments that everyone's posting online. And I just want to go through the poll right now, just so you guys have a bit of feedback. We asked, are people using a branching strategy? 46% said yes, they're doing a feature release and main branches. 8% are saying yes, they're using main and release branches. Only 12% are using main only branching, but we had a solid 35% of people saying they want to learn more about branching. So thank you both for that session. I'm really sad that we don't have time for Q&A, but we're going to be answering the Q&A in the chat that people put and coming back to everyone on that. Okay?
Absolutely.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you both. Thank you. All right, everyone. We're going to take a quick break, and we're going to hear about Global DevOps Bootcamp. It's a worldwide event that is organized by and for the DevOps community. So in this event, you're going to work as a DevOps team to complete challenges and compete against each other and other teams all around the globe. So check out the link at the end of the clip and in chat to find out more. Then we'll take a moment with our friend Rick to stretch things out a bit and be mindful of our posture.
Global DevOps Bootcamp, an awesome event worldwide.
An event in a box, so it follows the same outline and it has the same content regardless of where it is delivered.
And just learning about DevOps, and in this case about site reliability engineering.
Herzlich willkommen. Welcome to
Dobrodošli u Hrvatsku.
Välkomna till As the Stars.
Welcome to the Yorkshire edition of Global
They asked the least flexible person around to be able to give you some ideas and some tech stretches. So they found me. How about we try some shoulder shrugs? Not too bad. Just simply back up straight, good posture, and you're going to be taking your arms down by your sides and then simply going and raising them and dropping them 10 times. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Do that 3 more times.
I hope everyone enjoyed the break, got a little bit posture setting with Rick, and now we move on to our third session, Building in Security and Quality with Suzanne Daniels. I am so excited to have Suzanne here. Suzanne, welcome. It looks like we don't have Suzanne's vocals. We'll give her just a minute. I'm sure everyone's done it. We've joined a meeting and forgotten mute. The next session is going to be on building in security and quality. Suzanne's fantastic at this. We're going to talk about developing infrastructure and infrastructure as code with containers. And Suzanne, looks like you're back.
Yeah, I hope so.
Yes.
So this is the You're on Mute thing. You can't have a conference without that one. So hey, folks, and thank you for hanging out with us today here at All Around Azure to learn more about DevOps and to learn more about how you can deliver your application faster, more secure, and more reliable. So let's dive right into it. I'm Suzanne Daniels. I'm Developer Engagement Lead here at Microsoft. I see my screen is shared, so that's good news. We are going to continue the journey of Tailwind traders. They started out organizing themselves, dipping their toes into DevOps within the previous sessions, and they, moved along this journey. Fast forward a little bit. So they, adopted these methodologies. They invested in technology, and then they decided, okay, let's really benefit the cloud. Let's really benefit of DevOps and let's see if we can break up our monolithic application. And, if we can add some security to that. Release faster, but also more reliable. Now, let's take a look at what they have done. So the thing you want to learn about during this session is about security, about secrets, managing them, making sure that your code is reliable and is secure. We're going to apply security to containers. You'll also learn how to leverage the existing stuff already built into Azure. And then we are going to look at how we can build and gain confidence in our code. So this is the Tailwind Traders website, and this is the application you by now might recognize a little bit. It is built out of an ASP.NET Core and React app. It has two databases, Azure Cosmos DB and Azure SQL Database, and it runs on web apps. Now they moved on to creating microservices. Let's take a look at what it looks like right now. As you can see, now the application consists of several microservices, 11 total, 9 for the application, and 2 to route the traffic. And it uses still the same database. But as you can imagine, using more microservices, releasing faster, it's more difficult for Tailwind traders to actually stay secure and to have confidence that they are secure. So they decided, well, we need more. So we need to be aware of the quality in our code. We need to, have some control on our abstracted layers, all those microservices. With decoupling and adding more microservices, they really could not ignore these things. So let's take a look at our application. I'm going to switch over to my browser here. There you go. So if you take a look at the application, this is the repository we're going to use. And first, let's take a look. This is just our Tailwind Traders backend application. Now, one of the things, and that's a thing which is true for many projects you use and many applications we use and build ourselves, it's built out of various components which are open source. These might be a few projects, these might be a lot of projects with many, many thousands of contributors. Now, the most recent example which comes to mind with me is the Mars helicopter. GitHub identified nearly 12,000 developers who worked on this open source project used for having this Mars helicopter, traveling, making videos, all the things that operate that Mars helicopter. 12,000, that really is a lot. And as we all know, security issues just happen where people are working. And are you aware of which projects are used for your application? And then come to think of it, that one CVE for one of those projects you're using? And let's think of our own company. So you have this microservice, you're responsible for that. But how can you detect a vulnerability coming from another microservices, maybe somewhere upstream? And how will that affect your security of your microservice? So luckily for us, there's some built-in tooling in GitHub, and we're going to take a look at that right now. And you can also extend this functionality with other products you know and love. So let's head over to the security tab here. There are some notifications. First, let's take a look at Dependabot. Dependabot automatically monitors security advisories, and it will show where it found them and how to resolve it. Let's take a look at this one. As you can see, there's some CVEs, and the recommendation is to update to a newer version. Now, luckily, there's also this button to create a security update, making it really easy to apply the recommendation to my project. See? Just like that. So Also, like I shown you earlier, via Insights, you can just watch all the dependencies your software has, which is, in this case, really a lot. So this Dependabot thing, this is community powered. So it is based on the largest vulnerability database. You'll have the power of thousands of people, watching over your shoulder and making sure that your code is okay. There's no vulnerabilities. Let's head a bit deeper here. And let's take a look at these alerts. Code scanning alerts, cross-site scripting. Well, that sounds serious. This is actually generated by CodeQL, and that's advanced analytics for your code. So this is, once again, powered by a community. Top security experts. Let's take a look here. So this is where the problem is. This is where it detected. And let's take a look at the paths. Now with this information, I can just head on and apply some advisories, making sure that my code is not vulnerable here, because we do not want cross-site scripting vulnerabilities. So if you ask me what I like about this, it does not break my workflow. So these things are just there. You can just enable them and it will immediately make your workflow more secure because you get notified of all these things. So the next thing is these applications run on containers on Azure. So let's first take a look at Azure. So one of the first places to check your security for your containers is going to Security Center. And there you can, for instance, look at this one. This is a report on the vulnerabilities in my ACR, or Azure Container Registry. As you can see, my repositories are not that healthy. For my entire project, there's only one healthy repository. It's the popular product API, but the rest, not so much. So let's dig a little deeper what's happening here. So there's a few images here, 8 of them, and I'm going to check the latest and see what happens and why it triggered. Okay, this is interesting. There's users with a password, but this one, hard-coded credentials. Well, let's click on that one and see what happens here. So this is a Docker image with a null password for the root user. Now, the question to ask yourself here is not why is there no password, but why is there a root user? Because in general, you might not want to run your containers as root user, because that will make your containers and the platform which it runs on, it will make it like really vulnerable. So you want to make sure you don't do that. So what we could do to solve that is looking up the cart API and going to the Docker file. And as you can see, this is the Docker file. And what I would add here is just a user, like a user. Oh, can't type anymore. There. So if I would save this, the user would be set to 1000 and it would just run as a user. Now, looking real quick, 101 on containers. So containers are made up of layers. And as you can see, this is a Docker file creating the container. At the top, you can see that it's based on an Alpine. Then we are going to add the application, some commands. But all these layers compose your container. Now, if there is a secret in your container, it will be in one of those layers. And that also is not maybe the place you want to save your secrets. Your secrets should not be in your container. Now, a good way to mitigate that risk is to use Azure Key Vault, for instance. Azure Key Vault is a great place to keep your secrets. So in the case of this application, we could put here the Cosmos production connection string, for instance, and just call that one from our application to make sure we do not save that secret in our container, right? Also, one neat thing is that when we would have a change, we would switch to another database. Then we can just, make it active on a certain date, make a change on a certain date. So these are the little things you can do. And also, you can really manage who has access to those keys and who can change it. So your certificates, your connection strings, any secret you can think of, you should put in a central place, which is centrally managed, and also not leave it lying around in your containers. Good. So that is the Docker container. If we would build it and we would do these changes for all our containers, eventually in this whole overview, each repository would of course end up okay. Not for the older versions, but at least for our new images, which we would upload then. So the next layer is, of course, it runs on something, right? So these containers, they run on a platform. Now, Tailwind traders chose to run with on AKS, which is a managed Kubernetes service. If they would not have done that, they would be, responsible for the whole control plane. So that is the whole infrastructure, which actually runs Kubernetes, right? And each component, they would be responsible for patching. They would be responsible for keeping it up. The question is, do you have all the expertise? And do you have the time and money to do so? Now, if this is managed, then it makes it pretty straightforward. You do not have to worry about the left side. You only need to worry about what runs on your containers, what runs on your nodes, right? So also, if you look at the services, it is also fairly easy to update them. So let's take a look at this one, which was already created. And you can see that every component which is in there is automatically there. So you do not need to worry about that, or you would not have any problems managing this one, right? And also the updating, it's fairly easy. It's just choosing another version, and it will make sure that there's a rolling update there as well. Also, another thing which you could do to make your containers more secure is using Azure Policy. Azure Policy is an extension which you can add to your Azure Kubernetes service, and will also make sure that the compliancy of your whole environment is managed. So this goes for like certain settings, configurations, but also vulnerabilities which we know are not good, like running privileged containers. It will also report on that. So this is how we can make sure that our containers are really secure, and we are able to make sure that well, at least also our custom policies are also in place. So you are certain that nobody can cross those boundaries which you set, which is super important if you work with multiple teams with microservices. So I am looking for my thing to switch back. There you go. Now the other thing which you also do not want to lay around in your containers is like your built environment. So if I scroll down, here's an example of a multi-stage build where the application gets built, but the actual output of that, it gets moved to another image. So your Docker image really stays clean. This is also a thing to take into account. Like, you do not want to run your built environment in your Docker container, both for security, but also it will make them like really big, and that's not really necessary. Okay, so in a short time, we already found a lot of ways we can make Tailwind traders run more secure and more confident. Like, they at least have the insights, they know what to do, and they know how to make sure that their stuff is secure. They can put their policies into place, right? Those services, however, if you look at their whole environment, they're services. There are many, and they need to make sure that also the creation of those services is automated. And this is where infrastructure as code also comes in. So the next step for Tailwind traders to be more secure is to make sure that for this environment, they are able to restore this environment and roll it out when necessary. So let's dive into the last part of this presentation. And this is something we are going to run a demo of as well. But to give some context, in many organizations, you are a developer responsible, or with your team responsible for one microservice, right? And you cannot push changes if you can't test it within the actual running environment, right? So there's a way to solve this. And the way to solve this is to use an extension. And it's the bridge to Kubernetes. There's an extension available in VS Code. So if we hop over back to VS Code, I'm going to open that. It's called bridge to, bridge to Kubernetes. There we go. This is what it's called. And with bridge to Kubernetes, you can actually isolate your microservice and make it a part of your environment and test it via a URL. But I can talk about this, but let's show you. So I recorded it for the sake of time. So can you roll the demo, please? I'm responsible for the shopping cart app. Now let's navigate to the application by this. Select a product and let's go add it to the cart to see if it works. There you go. Now, as you can see, there's a bug here. It adds garden gnomes each time we press a product. This is a great reason to show how you could debug. We're not starting the normal debugger. We'll use the Kubernetes one right here. This one uses the bridge extension we just installed. It takes a little while, but we are able to run this container in an isolated environment, but as a part of my application. So the debugger is now connected, and it uses port 3001, available as a port 3000 at localhost. Port 3001 is the one which is specified in our Docker file, as you can see right here. Let's drop down into my microservice for the shopping cart. Now, there's this asynchronous service. There you go. And this is what we'll want to look at to see what's happening. Now we'll add a breakpoint at the return to check the value. So let's go down to the drop-down box and we can go to our isolated instance. Now if you click that, you will be redirected to your browser. Notice this prefix? This is the isolated environment. When I now go add the product, we will hit our breakpoint pretty soon. Add to cart, let's go over, hover over, and IntelliSense will do the work for us. It will show what communication is going on there. And yes, there's the garden gnome again. So let's look at the call stack. Here's the add product function. So this might be the reason why this is not okay. So let's scroll up a little bit and see what happens. Now, of course, nobody ever hard-coded stuff to test. But, well, we did. So it should use the request body, which will change. And then we'll comment out the hard-coded product. There you go. Now, this might help a little bit. Let's save that one. And restart our debugger, just to be sure that we are refreshed. Breakpoint's still there. Let's go. Now let's add that microwave again. And if we're lucky, it will be in here. So let's hover over. IntelliSense will do the work for us. Microwave, yes, that looks like success for us. So what are we going to do right now? Well, we are going to check if it's in our cart. Good. And now we will clean up, remove the garden gnomes, and make sure that we can give it another test run. So now we're feeling much more confident, so let's remove that breakpoint. We're feeling lucky today. Let's go. Go to the kitchen accessories and we'll go for something red, but a coffee maker, which is better than a garden gnome if you ask me. There you go. This is success. Now I am really confident that I've made the right change and I can actually push this to our repo. But how about the rest of the team? Because the rest of the team now might not be confident yet and they want to test this as well. So let me push that to our repository, and as you can see, it will kick off a Github action. So let me create a pull request first. There you go. And now it will kick off. And what will happen is it will actually it will build a single API container and it will deploy it in my own namespace, but also for the team to test this change. So with this Github Actions, everyone on the team can use that isolated preview URL. Now it will take a while for that to be generated, but it will be done soon enough, and there it is. So as you can see, with this URL, everybody in my team, but also other stakeholders in my company, can visit this URL and can actually see this change and approve it. And this way, everybody in our company can be sure that this is the right change to push forward to.
And this concludes the demo. And as you can see, it is really easy to debug your application this way. It is not really easy to set up, I'll admit that. Looks like shiny things, but it's worth it when you succeeded.
Thank you, Suzanne. That was awesome. That was really, really great. That was a great demo, really in depth. And I think it really shows the reality of developing infrastructure as code as containers. And interestingly enough, we did a bit of a poll on this one. And I encourage everyone to keep pushing those, poll feedback into the Learn TV sessions. The question was, are you currently using a microservices or monolithic architecture in your latest project? 57% of people that answered are using microservices and 38% are using monolithic. So that's an awesome change in the industry, right? That's something we would not have seen several years ago. So that's really cool. We did have one question. We're going to make this quick. Can Azure Security Center scan external repositories or just Azure Container Registry, Suzanne?
I am not sure. I am like a bit privileged working at Microsoft.
I know that it can. I think it depends on what it is too. I know it can scan other things. It depends when they say external repository. So if there's other kind of security bits built into other products like GitHub, etc. So for Stephen who asked that question, if you want to throw in another question, we'll get one of our experts to answer. But it just depends what your repository is. But I know it can scan other things. But if you want to give us some more specifics, I think we can go into that. Suzanne, that was awesome. We have you back for one more session in a few minutes. So thank you, and we'll see you again shortly.
Yeah, thank you.
All right, everyone, we're going to take another moment and see an illustration of the Learn Live journey from our friend Nitya. Check out the weekly live show at aka.ms/learnlive. All right, everyone, we're back with our fourth session with my friend Charlene McEwen, delivering change to the cloud. I'm so excited about this session. So welcome, Charlene, and
Hi, April.
let's get to it.
Hey, how you doing? I'm glad to be here.
Awesome. Well, let's crack on and let's go to your session. I'm super excited about this one, and we'll see you on the other side for Q&A.
Sure, no worries. Yeah, so I'm Charlene McKeown. I'm a cloud solution architect focused on Azure application development with DevOps and GitHub. So in this session, we're going to be talking about delivering change to the cloud. So you've already been hearing a lot about Tailwind traders this morning. So you'll know they're an online hardware store. Their software delivery team and their engineers have been getting much better recently at working together as a team. They're using things like Microsoft Teams and Azure boards to collaborate. You know, they're taking ownership of security really early on in the development lifecycle and throughout. And they've started to do continuous integration testing as well. But when it comes to actually deploying those changes to their application and delivering those changes to customers, is still quite a manual process at the minute. It's getting delayed more often because it's perceived to be quite difficult by the team, and every deployment that they do just feels a little bit dangerous and a little bit risky to them. And when the team does finally deploy those changes, is all of that effort and work going to have been worth it? They don't really know, right? They don't know until those changes are in the hands of their customers. So the team realized that they could end up spending a lot of time cutting code to deliver zero or even negative value. So deploying more frequently and really understanding whether they've delivered any value is a key goal for the team. A deployment every few months just isn't allowing them to react quickly enough to customer feedback. And at Microsoft, we have a definition, and you've seen this morning already, but I think it's important to reiterate that, you know, the union of people, process, and products to enable continuous delivery of value to end users is how we define DevOps. And we're not talking about software. We're not talking about features or code. We're talking about that continuous delivery of value to end users. So in the Getting Started with DevOps session, we looked at how teams can collaborate more effectively. In the Managing the Flow of Work session, we saw improvements in how our work progresses from start to finish. And then in the last session, you've seen how what has been created is of a high quality and is also secure. But we haven't really talked just yet about delivering anything to end users, and that's what we'll be looking at in the next few slides and in the demo as well. So CI and CD, you've all heard these. We've talked about them throughout the talks today. I want to level set and make sure we're all on the same page as to what these mean, just so we can move through with a shared understanding through the rest of the session. So continuous integration is about ensuring that your changes are working with everybody else's changes. With every commit of your code, you're going to build it, you're testing it, you might be running lint checks and security checks as well. Continuous delivery, on the other hand, is about producing something that you can deploy whenever you need to deploy it. So that means your application and also any supporting infrastructure. So if you're deploying your application for the first time, it obviously has to run on something. So being able to deploy that application and the supporting infrastructure is what continuous delivery is all about. And then continuous deployment takes that one step further, and that's where your application is actually run through an automated pipeline workflow. So from that initial developer commit right through to that commit being deployed into production, but not necessarily straight to production, and I'll talk about what I mean by that in a second. So you've already sort of seen a bit of GitHub Actions in action today, but we haven't seen them used for continuous deployment just yet. And to recap, GitHub Actions are a great tool to automate any software workflow. And I'm not just talking about CI and CD, but workflows that respond to specific events. So you might have an example of wanting to clean up a branch after a pull request is closed, or you might want to respond maybe when an issue is posted in your repo. And so you can do that with GitHub Actions, and you can choose from dozens of events that trigger workflows. And of course, you can do both CI and CD as well. I definitely recommend checking out the GitHub Actions Marketplace. The last time I checked, I think there was over 8,000 actions in there that you can pull into your workflows and help you get started. And if you search for Azure specifically, there's over 100 actions just ready-made for you to pull in and start helping you to deploy to the Azure platform. So let's talk briefly about protecting production. So you were talked to today about trunk-based development. So if the Tailwind Traders team are using trunk-based development practices, they're working in these short-lived dev branches and they're merging frequently to main, then any commit to main should build and deploy their application to production, right? Well, we actually probably don't want that to happen, at least not straight away. And so today in the demo, I'm going to be showing you how we can use app service deployment slots. So you can think about deployment slots as a copy or a shadow version of your application. We're going to deploy our code changes, first of all, to our staging slot. We're going to observe the staging website, check out our changes and see if we're happy with those. And if we are, we can then promote those to production. And we can do that really easily with what we call a slot swap between staging and production. We're also going to look a bit at chat ops today. And so we're going to be using Microsoft Teams. And we're going to make use of a built-in connector and also a webhook. So that when we're deploying our application or making changes to our code, we can get notifications about that right in Microsoft Teams, where we're probably already doing our work. And so this is the plan for the demo. So I've already made a small change to the application, and I've pushed that to my remote repo, and I've opened a pull request. So when I merge that pull request into main, what's going to happen is our application is going to deploy to our staging slot. So a GitHub Workflow is going to kick off and do that for us. At the same time, we're going to get notified about this in Microsoft Teams. We're going to be able to see what's happening with that deployment and interact with it. When we're happy with those changes in staging, we can then promote those changes to our production slot. Okay, so with that, we're going to jump straight into a live demo. So with live demos, anything can happen. So I want you all to collectively cross your fingers for me. So let's get started. So this is the Tailwind Traders website, and we've identified a change that we want to make. So this currently reads recommended, and it's not really clear that this means recommended categories that customers can browse to. So I've gone ahead and made that small change. So if I come over to GitHub, this is my pull request that I've opened. And I can click on the changes here. And we can see on line 7, I've simply updated it to read recommended categories. What also happened when I opened this pull request is that we ran through some checks just to make sure I hadn't introduced any breaking changes. So my workflow automatically ran through some .NET kind of build and install and tests for me to make sure everything was good with that. And it all looks good to me. Those checks passed, and we can see that down here. So all my checks are good. And I can go ahead and merge this pull request. So I'm merging my change into main right now. Cool, that looks like that's happened. So I think what I'm going to do now is come over to Microsoft Teams and talk a little bit more about chat ops. So you can see here, I'm in the Tailwind Traders chat ops channel. And you can see that there's some notifications that I've received. So automated build in progress. And this happened when I opened the pull request. And you can see that build succeeded as well. So that's just the check that I was showing you. So it's a really nice way to see these changes kind of when we're already in Teams, maybe chatting with our teammates. We've had a few more come through here as well. But what I want to show you is how easily you can get these set up. So if we click on the ellipsis here and come down to connectors, there are built-in enterprise connectors that you can set up and use really easily. So I'm using the GitHub Enterprise pre-built connector, and I've configured that to give me notifications when I make changes to my code base, when I open pull requests, or when I comment on issues. So that's a really nice way to integrate. I've also configured this incoming webhook, and I'm making use of this webhook within my GitHub Actions workflow to send rich, detailed information about my deployment to teams, so my team can see what's happening. And I'll show you that a little bit later. So we should have just got another notification here. So when I did that merge from my dev branch into main, that was a push event. So we have this adaptive card that has been sent by my workflow just to let me know that, okay, a deployment to staging is now in progress. So we can see at a glance the event type, which is that push. We can see the environment that we are deploying to. We can see the status of it. And what's more, we can see the commit message and also the repository and branch that we have pushed to. And what's really nice is we can actually click here and go off and see the change that was made. And you can see this is my commit ID, and then my change is here. So I'll come back into Teams, and what's really nice as well is I can just click this button to go off and view the status of my deployment to staging. So let's do that now. Okay, cool. So this is my GitHub workflow. And you can see it consists of 2 stages. I'll just scroll down here. I've got a deploy staging job and I've got a deploy production job. Now, the way I've configured this is that this has to be successful in deploy staging before deploy production will even kick off. And this deploy staging job actually reflects, I guess, 2 things. So first of all, I've got my staging deployment slot, and that's currently what we're deploying to in Azure App Service. And I've also set up some GitHub environments. So I'll talk to that in a second. And similarly with deploy production, once we get there, we'll be deploying to our production website. So I mentioned GitHub environments. So I want to just come back out to the homepage to show you this in a bit more detail. If I scroll down and zoom in just on the right-hand side here, you'll see I've configured 2 environments, one called staging, and we can see that we've got that deployment that we've just kicked off in progress. And we've got a production environment as well, which has a deployment already active there. So if I click through to staging, for example, the really nice thing about environments is that you get this activity log of deployments that have happened to that environment. So you've got all of that history. We can see currently what is active in our staging application, and we can see what's currently being deployed into the staging slot. And if I actually click on this, you can go right back to the commit that I just made. So at a glance, you've got that kind of history and that traceability of the change that triggered this deployment. And we can see the same thing for production as well. The other thing I'll show you is with GitHub environments, you have the ability to set additional rules. So I mentioned we want to protect production as much as possible. So what I've actually done here is I've said, okay, before anything gets deployed into production as a part of my workflow, we must have a human person come in and review this and say, yes, I'm happy with those changes. So you can set a few reviewers here. And you can also manage secrets. So I have some Azure credentials stored here that are only usable in my production workflow. So that's a really nice way to segregate your secrets as well. If I come back to Teams, it looks like that deployment to staging was successful, and we can see how long it took, 220 seconds. So that's really cool. I'm going to click on my View Staging website to go off and see if those have been reflected yet. Now it's interesting, I'm currently building and pushing a Docker image, and that can sometimes take a few minutes to pull down into my app service. So we'll see if that's reflected yet. And we can see it hasn't. We would expect this to read recommended categories, but that's fine because I want to show you my staging slots and what these look like. So this is the Azure portal. And we're in my app service at the minute. And these are the 2 production slots, the 2 deployment slots that we have set up. So we have production and we have staging. And what we've also got here is 100% of our user traffic is currently going to our production slot. If we wanted to, we could divert a proportion of that traffic to our staging slot. So when we've deployed that change, we can actually experience customers using that change, interacting with it, and seeing, if it's been successful or not. So that's a nice feature of deployment slots. But I'm going to leave that on 100% at the minute. The other thing we can do with staging slots, which is particularly useful when we're deploying container images, is we've got this deployment center, and we can come over and look at logs and see what's happening in the background. So if you are experiencing, this taking a while, and it is a live demo, so it might take a couple of minutes, you can come in and look at the logs and see what's going on with that. So we can see we've got all of our history here. We can see we were pulling our image down from the container registry, and it looks like it's ready to go actually. So let's come back to our staging website and give it a refresh. Perfect. We've got our recommended categories, and that looks good to me. So I think I'll come back into my repo, into my action, and I'll go ahead and approve that that promotion of those changes to my production environment. So I simply need to click here, review deployments, give it a click, and approve. And I'll show you just briefly what the workflow file looks like in case you haven't worked with actions before. So I'll zoom in. So again, this workflow kicked off on a push to main. I defined 2 jobs. So my first job was to deploy to staging. And we have a couple of actions in here. So we have that notification to Teams that I showed you of that card with the detailed information about the deployment. We're passing some secrets in as well, so we need that Teams webhook to be able to interact with Teams. And we also need a GitHub token so that we can send detailed information about the deployment. The next step was to log into the Azure Container Registry. And then I simply did a Docker build and push of my application and all of its dependencies to the container registry. Then I authenticated to Azure, again with those Azure credentials that have been configured to my environment. And I told my app service staging slot to go off and pull that new image down. And then my production job kicked off. And it's very similar. We had the Teams deployment card. We logged into Azure. And then to swap those slots around, it's simply a one-liner in the Azure CLI. We just tell staging to swap with production. And hopefully that will have happened. If I zoom back out of here, we can see we're still going. We'll let that do its thing for another minute or so. What I will show you, I mentioned the marketplace for actions. If I come into marketplace and I click on actions on the left. So this has gone up again. I checked this morning, and yeah, there's over 8,000. It goes up incrementally every time I check it. So there's a ton of community sourced actions that you can use in your workflows. And if that's a little overwhelming, you can always filter by category on the left-hand side to pin down what it is you're interested in. So you might be interested in project management actions that help you develop workflows there. And I mentioned you could search for Azure. Let's do that. And let's take off that filter actually. Let's come back out. Take off this filter because there's definitely more than that. There we go. There's over 100 actions that you can use to help you deploy to the Azure platform. So let's check out Teams. Yep, our production environment has been successfully deployed to. So let me just click the production website and we should see recommended categories, and we do. So that's awesome. Let me just pull up a couple more slides here. So yeah, I guess what we've seen in this demo, we deployed changes to the cloud in a safe and repeatable way. We made sure that our change actually passed some tests before we even merged them into main. We've made sure that our team has been kept up to date with the changes to the main branch and any deployments that are happening without them even having to leave Teams. We've made sure that we protected production using GitHub Environments and app service slots. And finally, we automated the whole thing using GitHub Actions. And that's it.
Awesome, Charlene. That was a fantastic session about actions. That was really, really good. We got some great questions coming up for you. And we also did a poll during this session. The poll question was, are you using GitHub Actions for CI, so continuous integration and or continuous delivery? 17% are using it for CI/CD. 11% are using it for CI only, which is really cool. 56% are using it, are not using GitHub Actions, but they're using something else. So I wonder if they're using Azure DevOps or something else for CI/CD. And then 16% are not using any tooling to support CI/CD, which is interesting. So I think that 16% is interesting. Like, what are they using for their other tooling? So put that in the chat. That's a really cool thing. But it's interesting to see that about 53% of people aren't using actions. And I think actions are more than CI/CD. Charlene, have you built an action that you thought was really fun, or where did you get started with actions? What did you find to like really help you get started and excite that passion for actions?
Yeah, well, it's similar to Esther, right? I kind of started out with the basics, and like my history with DevOps was I got started with Azure DevOps, and I was very much using kind of classical UI and stuff like that. So YAML was quite new to me until a year ago. So I really wanted to learn GitHub Actions, and the easiest way to start with me was those basic Hello World applications, and finding sometimes Microsoft publish really cool kind of source material on GitHub that you can use and start building your own actions to deploy it and just start playing with it. So I think just get started. Even if you've got a blog, right? I've got a blog and I use GitHub Actions to deploy that. So like find a personal project and something that means something to you. And I think that's always a really nice way to learn about stuff. In terms of my favorite actions, I don't know that I've used it for much other than CI/CD, but there's definitely some stuff I want to get more into, like the project management side. Like, how can I automate that and get a bit better at that? Because I'm terrible at it, right? I'm absolutely terrible. And I showed you the categories for actions in the marketplace, and there's a ton of actions and workflows that you can use to get better at that. So yeah, it's definitely on my wish list to do.
No, absolutely. There's some really cool stuff. And there's actually a question from Pinaki that kind of applies to this. His question was how to display output variables in a GitHub workflow into like GUI boxes. Now, what's interesting is you can hook actions into pretty much anything. So things like Slack, and again, like you've shown, Teams, and all these other products that our developers are using. I think a lot of people like these output variables, and there is a way to kind of like show the output and do color coding. Have you done anything cool with kind of any output just to make that GUI appearance really easy for your team when using actions?
Yeah, I mean, if we go back to what I just showed you in the demo, actually, you can still see my screen, maybe. I'm lazy, right? I love to use built-in workflows and actions that people have already been so kind to go off and build. I love that. And so the Teams integration that I used gives you the ability to kind of color code it. So taking the hex code. So at a glance, you either see the scary red bar or the really great green bar. And I love that. At a glance, you get that visual feedback of if it's gone well or not. So that's the extent to which I've done that. But yeah, curious if you've done that, April, or is that also in your wish list?
I've done that. I've done that in Teams more than not, I would say. So again, setting up a Teams channel, giving those notifications, but then also having kind of your build, success or failure, and having that box. I think it as humans, seeing that color, at least for me, and I'm a very visual person, seeing that color box saying, yes, it succeeded versus red, it's not. And even if you're running maybe multiple tests and maybe a more complex workflow, those colors can say, right, these things succeeded, these things failed. Just easy red, green for me. Now, for people that might be colorblind or have other issues, that might be more difficult. So you could use a meme or some other kind of output that might be fun for the team to just recognize that, right?
Yeah, and I've seen there are actions in the marketplace that you can pull in and add emojis to pull requests and things. So yeah, 100% check that out. Cool.
Yeah, cool. The next question was, does the Teams chat ops only work with GitHub Enterprise? I believe it works with all flavors of GitHub, but Charlene, I don't know if you know that. You're a little bit closer to the customer side and more that licensing side.
Yeah, I'm not 100% sure with you. I'm actually using that connector with my own personal GitHub account. So I think it's named GitHub Enterprise, but have a stab at it and see if it works for you. I'm pretty sure it will. But yeah, can't say definitively. Just try it to see.
Yeah, and I was having a look at the documentation. I couldn't find anything otherwise. I know it integrates into GitHub Enterprise, but I think it just works with a normal GitHub account. So
I think so. I mean, that's what I'm using it with. So yeah.
Yeah, cool. All right. Another question that we've had from Damien. Where did you set up the approval inside GitHub Actions to run the deployment from staging to production?
Yep, so I've actually configured that. If you remember, I went into settings on my environments, and in there, there's a checkbox to say, don't continue with my workflow into production without somebody approving it. So it was in there. Cool. You can also, in workflows, you can make sure that jobs won't run unless the previous job was successful. So you can use a depends on kind of tag in your workflow. So that's another nice way to make sure something broken isn't somehow getting in there.
Yeah, and I know recently, and I say recently, I will fully admit I'm completely lost on like timings of when this was released. But I know it was released, I want to say in the past month or two, that manual, you could put the depends on and have that automated piece, or even just a manual check to say, you can do the automation and the manual check to say, yep, this task completed. Now I need that manual check before it proceeds. We still like that human element, even with a fully automated system. It just allows us to kind of fulfill all sorts of requirements.
Yeah. And I mean, we could be doing something a bit more advanced as well, right? If we have instrumented our application with App Insights, we could have that initial staging deployment, but then we could be querying App Insights and checking out the performance. So you can have that automated sort of monitoring and have that have that kind of enforce what we do next. But I always think it is nice to have that kind of final tick from a real person.
Absolutely. And there's so many tools that come into this, this whole workflow you've put together that allow you to see end to end of your application, which I think is really, really cool. I think, sometimes we deploy something and don't think of that end to end visibility. And when we're talking about DevOps processes and the value of DevOps, it's being able to monitor, get that feedback, and then into our next development cycle, really say, we can see end to end, we can see where we can improve on points in our workflows. Like this is a great way of hooking in things like App Insights and everything end to end on that application.
Yeah.
Cool. Any other feedback for everyone watching? Any other suggestions? We got one more question. Would you recommend automatically promoting changes to production?
Oh, yeah. So I kind of touched on that. It's tricky, and I think you can bring in that you can bring in a level of automation with maybe you want to query health check endpoints, right? Are you getting 200s after that deployment to staging? You could be fairly confident that you haven't broken anything. With UI changes, like I showed you, it's a little more tricky, and quite often you'll want to do some manual sort of testing there. I think a mixture is the ideal, and it depends, I guess, on your level of your appetite for risk. So I would say just whatever works for you. And the good thing is with GitHub environments and things like deployment slots, Azure Monitor, App Insights, you've got so much control and you've so many options. So just do what works for you and experiment with it.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't think there's a one-size-fits-all answer for that. So Charlene, thank you so much. That was a great session. So before we get on to our next session, we're gonna round things out with our friend Cecil Phillip, who's going to coach us through some fun breathing exercises that are going to help you de-stress.
Devops Dojo is a community of practice at Microsoft. It takes the staged approach of the martial arts philosophy, Shuhari. Dojo consists of 4 belts: white belt for standardized DevOps, orange belt for scaled DevOps, green belt for lens DevOps, and black belt for intelligent-driven DevOps. The first reference implementation uses Azure DevOps, while the second uses GitHub. Want to see how we Dojo? Dojo is a global and diverse community of contributors. Here is a Dojo masterclass for North America teams, for Europe teams, and for Asia teams. Dojo can also be a lot of fun. In 2020, we moved to a remote delivery model. We study hard, debate hard, and play hard. Want to learn more about the DevOps journey and Dojo? Please visit Microsoft Learn.
Why don't we take a second and try out this breathing exercise called snake breathing. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make sure that I have my good posture, right? My back straight, my chest is out, and I'm going to inhale very deeply in my nose. And then I want to exhale throughout my mouth. And I'm going to hold a very low hissing sound and like slowly release all that air that's inside of my chest, right? So let's try it out, right? In 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, inhale. Okay, I think that's enough. I think you get the point. But definitely try this a few times on yourself. Try it with your family members. Maybe even make it a competition and see who can hold their breath the longest. Anyway, take care and enjoy.
All right, everyone, we're back. So thank you for joining us from the UK and EMEA European regions today. We have our last and final session, but I'm so excited to invite Suzanne Daniels back, where we're going to talk about operating software in the cloud. Hey, Suzanne, welcome back.
Hey, and hey, folks. Thank you for sticking with us today for All Around Azure, talking about DevOps. Now, we discussed a lot of things around DevOps, around securing your application, how you deploy it, how you can collaborate, all these kinds of things. But we haven't touched yet on operating the software in the cloud. Now, my name is Suzanne Daniels. I'm Developer Engagement Lead here at Microsoft. And let's take a look at our company, Tailwind Traders. Now, they went through all these changes, but they are not quite there yet. So what we are going to discuss are the topics they were thinking about to improve their operations and scale their operations in the cloud. There needs to be an incident responsible, so a person who you can call and will actually respond when you have a problem. We do not want to rely on humans too much when we don't need that. So no magic people, no machines. And repetitive tasks, well, we must automate them where possible. And why they came to these insights, we will touch upon that shortly. So if you look at the whole DevOps cycle and all the elements we discussed, there's this one thing which is key to make it unnecessarily complex and unnecessary time consuming and less dependent on humans, and that is automation. Also, of course, when you talk about resolving incidents. So let's dive into the story which happened. So the website went down. Oh no. So the super fancy senior IT admin, he moved on elsewhere. He had another role, moved to a different company, and he's gone. And the website went down just after cleaning up his accounts. Everything just started to fail. So what happened then? Well, the emails went out. The notifications went out. We just learned how to do notifications. Well, the channels were full of notifications. But no one is responsible for acting on those. And it's tough figuring out who should be responsible when you have some random authentication issues. So as time goes by, eventually it is solved. But well, it took some trouble, right? That was not the situation you want to be in, right? So after that facepalm, you could wonder how this was even possible, right? So oftentimes alert tooling is used for many purposes. This is a result, alert fatigue, you can call it. So people get lots of email, get lots of notifications, and they just do not pay attention anymore. And also people who are responsible should receive those results, those notifications, that output. Also, informational, that is not something you want to send out to people. And also not alerts on heartbeat or logging. That is maybe not something you want to wake up people for as a trigger. So if you look at incident notifications, they should be specifically directed. They should be actionable. It should be clear, what do you need to do? And they should only be sent out when it requires any human intervention. So let's take a look. What happened? So the previous engineer, he went for a new role, right? She went for a new role. Several components of our app infrastructure was somehow tied to that account. Our site, and with that, our business went down, and we rely on that. We do not want to move. We want to move to solve this authentication centrally and let go of passwords, keys, tokens. We want to remove the dependencies on human accounts, and we need to keep the secrets just what they are, secrets, in a central place and be able to manage them, no matter which person leaves. Manual intervention and repetitive tasks should be automated, and our workflow should become predictable. Also, for automation, we should not depend on human accounts. And like I said, secrets should be just a secret, and you can use a central secret store. Now we are going to switch over to a demo, and you'll see how you can use a Logic app and Microsoft Teams to create automation and response, and even solve it right from Teams. So let's start a demo. I hope that somebody... This is the Tailwind Traders Teams environment. Now what will happen is if an alert fires, it will tag the designated responsible individual, short DRI, and it will be mentioned, as you can see right now, and you can look at the notification, and here's the alert with all the details. Now the DRI can check the status of the website, And this will be all managed by logic apps. So it's going to ask a question to the bot, and it will say, okay, the status of the website is degraded. Yep. So we are going to check the configuration. Now for this, we also will not leave the app. We will just ask to check the settings to our logic app. And the logic app will look at the settings and it looks okay. So what do? There's an error, settings are good. Well, let's first try a restart. So dear Tilbot. And it restarted the website. And that seems all a-okay. So we've received an alert, we've investigated the problem, and we solved it without leaving the app. So is this magic? No. Let's try to create a logic app pretty much like the example we've seen right now. So we will call it restarter. Then we will review. Now it's important to notice the resource group and the location and the subscription. These all need to be the right ones. Otherwise, you will not able to reach your services you might want to monitor and you might want to perform actions on. Okay, let's open up the designer. There's a few example and starting templates you can use, but we are not going to do that. For the sake of this demo, we are going to use a blank logic app and just start from scratch. Okay, the trigger will be coming from Teams. So there will be a message and we will respond to that message. So first we select the right team. That's the DRI team, the designated responsible team. And we are going to choose the right channel for this. And as you can see, it's now set for 3 minutes. Time is money for this company, so we'll make that 5 seconds. So every 5 seconds, it will check for new messages. Okay, let's move on to the next step. Now we are going to need a variable to put in our message. So let us create a variable and we are going to name that one reply, and the type that will be a string because we want to be able to put in a message. Okay, now we need to listen to the right keyword to start. So we will use Tilbot for that one, just like in the example you've seen earlier. There you go, we will look at the message body and it should start with Tilbot. Now, if it does not start with Tilbot, we don't want to do anything. Those can just be messages addressed to about anyone in that channel. But if it does start, so if it is true, we can add an action there. Now we need to make sure, first thing, that we can mention the right individual. So the person actually calling Tilbot. That person should be mentioned. So we are going to add that. There you go. And we're moving on to the next action. So the next thing is, of course, looking at the command. So we are going to check the body content again, but now we are going to look for a specific command. This command is restart the web frontend. And it can be anywhere in the message. Now, if this is true, we actually want to use the app service and restart our service. So we go to app service and well, there it is, restart web app. So we're going to click that one, making sure that we are signed in with a service principal. Now, you noticed in our previous talks, it is not wise to use human accounts. So we are going to work with service principal. We are going to put in all the details to make that work. And there you go. Now the question is, which app service do we want to restart? We're going to select the right subscription, the right resource group, and the right web app. Now, we need to set the variable for the reply, and we are going to put in our reply message here with dimension. Now, if this is false, the command is not recognized, we do want to send some reply, and we want to notify the person that this question is not recognized. So let's update that one, and there we go. Now we will post a message to the channel as a reply on the message. So this is the actual reply we will be sending out underneath the initial questions which is being asked. So let's test it immediately. So put in the question, could you restart the web front end? Okay, go, go, go. So we press enter and Tillbot is now working. Thinking back on the app, first, it'll pull every 5 seconds. It will see that there's a new message. It will check for a message starting with Tillbot. We have supplied that message. Then it will look for the command, restart the web front end, which is anywhere in this message. And then it will execute and, if the command is recognized, restart the web service. So let's see. And as expected, this all happened. The service was restarted. And this is a great example of how you can use all these tooling available to you to notify, to make sure that you would not leave the app. This is like the buzzword is ChatOps. Well, this is it. So this will solve a lot of problems, and it will also make it more easy for about anybody to interact with the services and to solve some common problems. Now, we've covered quite a few things. We've talked about, it's important to have those designated responsible people so that if there's any problem, at least somebody knows that the person is responsible upon acting on some failures, right? And the next thing is we discussed we can't rely on magic people. Remember that engineer that moved on? You do not want to rely on that person being there or that account being there. We also covered that we need to put our secrets and our passwords in a place where it's centrally managed. Or we need to rely on service principal or service accounts. Okay, the last thing is tooling over tasks. Automate anything you can. Like literally, if you want to, have to do repetitive things or stuff needs human interaction and it's not necessary, just go and automate it. Either with the tooling being supplied, in this case with Azure, or your third-party tooling you already know and love. But it is important to think about this and to make sure that you can, do the operations in a way that it's responsible. So there's responsibility in a way that you're also confident that if there is some calamity, that you will have the solution ready and your people know how to, use that solution. And this concludes my talk. So thank you very much for joining me for this session. And like everything we talked and discussed on today, you can find more on Microsoft Learn. More, lots more.
Awesome, Suzanne. That was great. So we're going to make up for some lost time in QA from your last session. We have a great amount of time for Q&A now. So there was a poll that was ran during your session. And the question was, have you ever been in a situation similar to that of Tailwind Traders team? So before we answer the poll, Suzanne, have you?
Yeah. And when I was preparing this presentation, this is fictional, right? But it comes really close to reality. And I've gone through this pain at a lot of customers I worked for in the past, and this is more common than one would think. And a little voice in the back of my head when I was talking a few minutes ago about having those secrets being managed. Also, the person who implements the tooling to manage your secrets, make sure that that person also uses this same principles. So that is just a little lesson I might have learned in the past.
Whenever I'm working with customers and we talk about single points of failure, and I've used, and I hate to say it, the hit by a bus analogy, but if you lose that person in the team, and I've been in that situation where we've lost that person and something terrible has happened and you don't want to be there, or somebody leaves, or there is an unfortunate event, and you can't have that single point of failure. And I would say to people, automate all things. So back to our poll. So about 40% people have been in this situation that Tailwind Traders has been in, and they feel they have it under control moving forward, and that's really good. Another 40% say, unfortunately, it's far too frequent, and that's unfortunate. But I'm hoping of that 40%, you took something today, you can learn from it, and take that moving forward and hopefully improve the situation in your organization. And then we actually have 22% that say they haven't seen this situation in their team, and that's awesome. We would like to see it higher than 22%, but I unfortunately have dealt with it way too many times in my career and in my past. So.
Yeah, it's good to know that to be confident there as well. So what we always said is like this. There's this thing called the TOS rule, and it applied to like data centers in your location. If you screw this server out of the rack and you throw it out of the window, will your company still be online? And then, well, okay, what if you toss your system administrator, out of the window? Well, that's not really something you want to do, of course, but will you still be online, and will you still be able to resolve issues you have and to do your deployments, to do your infrastructure deployments? Like the session before I presented as well, it is so important to have that infrastructure as code in place as well, because that same system engineer that left, that person, might as well be the only person knowing how to implement the infrastructure. So there's a lot of topics on there, like documentation. So what happens if I toss this out of the window, or like something more friendly? Will my company still be online, and will I be able to continue my operations? That's basically the main take I always have in the back of my mind.
Yeah, it's that single point of failure, what could go on, and we want to automate all the things. We want to take out that human error when and where possible, right? Next question: are logic apps the best way to build a chatbot?
It's one of the ways to build a chatbot, and in this case, if you look at what we are trying to achieve, I think it's the most logical choice to use this, because we want to interact with our services. And we need that deep integration to make it as easy as possible to implement this bot and to actually have it execute commands on our Azure infrastructure.
Awesome. And there's so many different ways to do it, but I think a logic app is a great way to build that chatbot, because it's that connector piece, right? It's a simple orchestrator.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's not a matter of what is the most easy way, but more on what do I want to achieve, and look for the good tooling there.
Cool. Now, next question is, can the logic apps be used to restart a virtual machine? Have you done that before? Yeah.
No, I don't use VMs because, but I can imagine they are also able to restart machines. I mean,
I haven't actually done it with a logic app. I think from my standpoint, when I've implemented a CI/CD system, it's been in a script, whether it be PowerShell, Bash. It's been in an execution script. But you could certainly add it as a task in a workflow in a logic app. I actually haven't done it that way. I've done it in a CI/CD pipeline.
And the question is, like, if you are running a VM, you have the whole operating system in there. So the question is, would you want to do that? I think not.
No, and personally, I don't. Again, I'm big with infrastructure as code. I love Terraform. And I might use something like desired state configuration. So I might do the reboot, the restart of machine, and then use DSC, desired state configuration, to check that virtual machine if I'm using a virtual machine in a customer environment. So there's certain ways you can do it. You can use a logic app. It really depends on what you want to achieve, but I have not done it that way personally. But it depends what your workflow is doing. All right, we have another question from Jason. What is the difference between a managed identity and a service principal?
Well, the service principal is
a token.
A token. Yeah, thank you. I was searching for the word. It is actually a token you exchange, and that way you identify yourself, which is a big difference of course, using more of like an account to identify yourself with.
Mm-hmm. So that's all the questions we have at the moment. So Suzanne, I have a question for you. What's probably the worst outage you experienced, and how long did it take you to recover from?
Well, I can, without going into much details, but like I said, you have to automate like anything you can, but also take into account that there's some controls you should put in place to make sure you can't do anything horrible to your infrastructure. So back in the days when I was responsible for a really large infrastructure somewhere, and the automation of that, what happened basically is that a colleague ran a command on like every server there was, like without any boundary, like every server, and just making sure that they were not accessible anymore, which of course was a bit difficult, because what happened is that some stuff, in short, stopped working, but also our monitoring, it just went like red all over, because the monitoring service was the first thing not able to access anything. So that was a really bad outage. We were able to recover, luckily with break loss accounts, and we were able to run scripts to recover the services. But it was really bad, and it took about 6 hours. Yeah, and it was not fun. It was, of course, at the end of the day, and well, it was a huge organization, so everybody, you know, and this is where you make those mistakes when managing your own infrastructure and trying to improve. Where people make mistakes, be it a security vulnerability, be it just typing the wrong command on like every server you have. Those are things which just can happen, and it's important to at least have those things in the back of your mind, and also make sure that there's proper controls there as well. Like, okay, the account we are using on each system, does it need this many privileges?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, at least amount of privileges like, required,
exactly,
right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
So that is my worst. And what's yours? Oh
gosh, we're running a little short on time, and we have another question, so I want to make it brief. I went on vacation for 10 days, came out, and we had a software storage outage, and my manager at the time had been crying, and I was like, "Are you okay?" He's like, "No, we've lost everything. We lost all of our tier 1 apps. We had a storage issue, disconnected our virtual machines, and we lost all of our data. It was bad." And we were servicing 180 retail stores across the US. So we, as a business, were completely shut down. And it took about a week to recover everything. We had to recover everything manually. We had to rebuild all our tier 1 applications, Citrix Exchange, etc. And large company, but small team. And I sat there with coffee, bagels, and coffee on repeat, recovering the system for over a week. So that sucked. But we have another question on a happier note. This question is, how do you ensure accessibility is ensured in the logic app design for your user capabilities?
Can you repeat that one?
Yes. How do you ensure accessibility is ensured in the logic app design for user capabilities? And I think this is a tough one. We are running tight on time a bit, but user ability capabilities, I mean, if you're trying to modify the logic app, there's lots of ways you can secure it. And interestingly enough, there's some good blog articles out there, Hamad, that we can share with you about securing the Logic app. But accessibility, I mean, there's some great development tools in VS Code you can use to edit and manage your Logic apps. You can also use everything inside the Azure portal. And again, it's like Suzanne just said, it's the least amount of access required. So your role-based access control is going to be in there. So there's certain ways you can tweak it depending on your company's requirements. So thank you, Suzanne. That was awesome. That was a great session. We're out of time. So we actually have to start closing off everything, unfortunately.
Oh.
So it's a shame, but it's been awesome. Thank you for having us. And thank you for doing 2 sessions today. It's been so awesome. So awesome.
It was fun. Thank you.
Good. Thank you so much. All right, everyone, we're going to wrap up now. I want to thank everyone for joining today. It's been such a great session. We have, a little bit of a leaving slide for you. We want to thank you for joining from the European region. It's been so great. We've had 5 amazing speakers with us today, some great experts in the field. I want to thank everyone for their feedback and their comments in the Learn Live forum. It's been great to have that. It's been great to see so many people online. So if you didn't catch the session live or you want to catch up on the material again, watch it, see the questions, see the demos again. All of these sessions are going to be available for you on demand in the next few days. The link is here. It's going to be aka.ms/AAA-DevOps GitHub. And if you want to dig into more content, we have some great learnings that are free for you on Microsoft Learn. You can follow the middle link here for you on the screen. Again, any topic, not just on DevOps, but maybe anything else you want to learn in Azure, or maybe certain programming languages, or GitHub Actions, or maybe some other tooling, some infrastructure as code tooling. You'll find it in Microsoft Learn. So check that out. We also have all the learning materials from these sessions, including the slide decks. If you want to go through and maybe reproduce the demos, in our GitHub repo. So aka.ms/AAA-DevOps GitHub-repo. So I want to thank everyone for joining today. It was awesome to have all of you here joining the European session of All Around Azure. And I hope that everyone learned so much about developing with DevOps into GitHub, using Actions and all the tooling that's out there, talking about all the different topics. So thank you everyone again for joining. We look forward to seeing you guys again on another session on All Around Azure.